Welcome to the Spirituality What? Podcast, where we explore the mysteries, joys, and challenges of being spiritual beings navigating our unpredictable human experience we call life here on planet Earth. I'm your friendly guide, Rebecca, ready to jump into our adventure of the day. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Spirituality What? Podcast. I am Rebecca, and we are here today to finish up part 2 of our 2-part episode with Meera on meditation as spiritual beings. And Meera's website is boundless-meditation.co.uk if you missed that last time or you're interested in finding out more information. And today we are going to talk about her specific tips for getting started in meditation, what meditation is really doing to our bodies and our minds physically, Maslow's peak experience, and meditation based on praise, love, gratitude, and compassion, and holding those things while you're meditating. The Ishaya program and what that's like and what that experience offers and how you can participate in that program, getting back to allowing an allowance in your life, and the fact that, which I loved when we talked about this, what's best for you in meditation or sort of any practice or thing that you're going to do is actually what you're willing to commit to and prepared to do or use. So this is a really key takeaway and an interesting topic, and we're going to just get right to it. You talked about the practice. We've talked a little bit about different kinds of meditation. So if I came to you and I was like, this sounds cool, I listened to your podcast, what are your 3 recommendations? How does somebody get started with meditation? Because I think this is one of those things where it seems like there's a high barrier to entry when people hear about it because of the things we've talked about. But really, I don't think there really is, if you have a couple of tools. So how would you recommend somebody get started, or what kind of practical things would you give them?
Yeah, there's no barrier to meditation at all. Anybody and everybody can. You've just got to want to do it, really. And I do think that it's helpful to find a teacher. Sign up to a beginner's meditation class and just start. Really, I think the way we figure out what's right for us in life is you can sit and think about stuff, but actually until you do it, you don't really know what's right for you and not.
Yeah.
And that for me, is I give people a few different techniques. So when I do my beginner's meditation class online, for example, I'll give them a very basic mantra meditation technique. I'll guide them through breathing meditation. I'll give them a visualization, so it they get a little bit of a feel for it. And then also just mindfulness, using the 5 senses with mindfulness. People are just shocked at how quickly it can go from a friction-filled experience to just gone, within seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think for anybody wanting to start out, it's just get that guidance. Find somebody that you gel with, that feels, compatible with you, I suppose, might be the phrase. And that might be just, signing up to the first class you come across and then just seeing, is this for me? And if it isn't for you, maybe there's another person, another class that you can attend. So it's really just how much you want peace, how much you want presence. If you want it, go for it, because, I think anything we get out of life is because we focus on it. At one point of focus on anything, and we'll always find it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think I like the 5 senses as well. We talked a little bit about that in the mental health episode when we were talking to Deb as kind of a good way to bring yourself back to awareness in general. And it really is an interesting practice. I did a mindfulness course through work. And I think I mentioned this on the podcast before, but we're going to go with it anyway. And we ate a raisin. And it took 5 minutes to eat this raisin because we had to smell it and we had to touch it for a minute and we had to put it up to our ear and listen to it. And then we had to lick it. And it was just this really intense activity to create, awareness for what we were doing. And then I realized I actually do kind of like raisins, which was a fun activity, even after kind of doing all of that. But I think this, I know you said what the difference between mindfulness and meditation is. And now I'm also looking at, like, your definition of spirituality is coming back to self. And so meditation is definitely a way to get to spirituality, to have a spiritual practice. But as we said before, it doesn't have to be. It can be this very physical thing. So can you talk a little bit about the science around what meditation is doing to your body when you're doing different kinds of meditations?
Yeah, so it's like whenever you carry out any form of meditation, it's bringing your attention down to one thing. So it's bite sized, because typically when we're thinking, it's like this whirring machine, of lots of different cogs, and we're like past, future, and it's just like one thought after another. It's this, it's just incessant, isn't it?
Yes.
And it's so pressure filled. So it's just like meditation just goes, and one thing. So, example is like throwing a whole handful of pebbles in a still pond, and
Mm,
it's chaotic, as opposed to just dropping one pebble in a pond, and then you get the beautiful concentric
mm,
circles. And the
yeah.
pond still stays quite still, and it ripples out, and then it's still again. Whereas if you keep throwing handfuls in, it's constantly choppy, and might stir up the mud on the bottom, for example. Whereas one pebble, and it's still one pebble. And so with meditation it's just coming back to that stillness. One thing, one thing. So everything just quietens down. Everything calms down, and then the still silent backdrop starts to open up for you. You start to recognize that you're aware, for example.
Mm,
Because when we're thinking all the time, we're just subject to whatever the thoughts are saying. Like the thought creates a feeling, an emotion, and we feel it somewhere in the body, and we're just constantly doing that. So the poor body is like, constantly getting these signals, and so it can't function as well. So meditation is just coming back to that natural operating mode, just one thing, and then it simplifies everything. And we remember, we recognize, oh yes, this is who and what we are.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, when you like there's like what am I trying to say? The body scan meditation, for example, is like an interesting one that allows you to, go through your body and kind of identify and see where you're like feeling things, and to accept and then kind of release whatever those things might be that you're feeling. So there are also some meditations that are, and the breathing, as you mentioned, a little bit more focused on physical things that are happening in your body potentially, and being able to actually relax your muscles. Um, I think bringing awareness to those things, but also then bringing awareness to the fact that you're bringing awareness, so as opposed to focusing on pain in your shoulder, for example, if you're kind of doing this body scan and you're focusing and bringing awareness to the acceptance and releasing, people can actually help physically, like physical changes within their
Mm.
body with meditation. And then there's also like the different kind of brain waves, right? Can you talk about the
Yeah,
brain waves at all?
yeah, I can never remember what they are. But it's just like, I think that when you quieten down the mind, then you get that coherence in the brain waves,
Mm,
So like Abraham Maslow talked about, you've got the hierarchy of needs, but he also used to talk about the peak experience.
okay.
And so when you have the peak experience, it might be, if you're, looking out at a sunset, for example, and it's just like you stop for a moment and you just appreciate the beauty in front of you, and everything, the mind quietens in that. And so then your brain waves become more, smooth, coherent, and also the left and right hemispheres of the brain, are connected, because sometimes they're not. With
Correct.
the thinking can be so chaotic, things are firing off in all sorts of directions, and so really it's just coming back to, again, that gentle coherence. And so the less activity of thinking in the mind, it's just like the brain waves just slow. So you see the different brain waves, if you see them
Yeah.
displayed, you kind of have got the really, the extreme ones where you are thinking, there's a greater degree
Mm-hmm.
from the center line,
Yep.
if you like, that they go up and down for. And then the state that you go into just before sleep, I think it's the alpha state, you start to get the more shallow brain waves. So yeah, it's really, for me, and you can have that while you're operating in your life. Like, you don't have to have, because you're doing more activity and conversations, those brainwaves can actually stay very calm and gentle. State of presence will bring you that coherence. And so actually every time you use an ascension technique, for example, automatically you get that
Mm.
coherence. And every time you come down to one thing, you're letting the mind just run on its quiet mode, if you
Mm.
like. It's natural operating mode. It doesn't need to be so extreme. And so I think there are devices actually that monitor the brainwaves at even more subtle levels than the typical cap, that they put on
Yeah.
to monitor your brainwaves. And I know we had one of our teachers once that put one of those on, and they were like, well, you're basically registering as brain dead because there was no thinking activity going on. And it's like, clearly you're still alive. And so I think there are meditation devices that you
Yeah.
can wear that actually you can start to, and it kind of brings up sounds like rain or
Yes.
birds. And I think it gets to quieter and quieter and quieter sounds as your brainwaves settle down
Yeah.
to rest. So even without thought, you can just go to really, really quiet levels. So those brain waves. Like for me, I'm not so interested in the science, other than knowing enough to be able to help people
Mm.
understand it that need to understand
Yeah.
it. For me, it's all about the experience. Like, I can guide you into that still silent experience. You can understand it or not. I can still help you do that if you follow the steps,
Mm.
that I guide you to. And so for me, I'm more passionate and excited about that, about, well, what experientially is the difference? It's like the whole placebo effect.
Yeah,
People go, oh, it's
absolutely.
a placebo, and it's almost like dismiss it. And I'm like, no, hang on a minute. If somebody is getting well without any extreme medication because they believe they're getting medication and that gets them well, I think that's fascinating. I'm like, what's happening there?
Yeah.
And for me, it can be more helpful to go beyond all belief, because I think then you just tap into absolute, pure, natural, vibrant health. But if belief gets you to a healthier state first, fabulous. Let's
Absolutely. There's
harness
nothing
that
wrong with that. Yeah.
rather than
Ab-
rather than dismiss it.
Absolutely. So, would you say that the ascension technique, meditation technique, is more advanced? I don't want to use the word complicated, but is
No,
something,
it's simple.
it's simple. Okay.
It's supremely simple. And so, people come and learn that have, it could be their beginner's meditation
Okay.
course.
Okay.
For example, we tend to teach over a weekend course the first 4 techniques that are focused on all the main root stresses that we have, and based on praise, gratitude, love, and compassion. And together, it's a really cool program. And over the course of the weekend, we kind of guide people in with little bit by little bit, because some people aren't used to sitting still. So, just doing it, a couple of minutes rather than straight into a 20-minute session, which is what we kind of, suggest is a useful amount of time, because it allows the mind to settle down enough in 20 minutes, can be equivalent to 8 hours rest at night. So for
Wow.
me, meditation just takes you to a deeper level of rest, because so often we go into sleep thinking, don't we? And so we're not, the activity is whirring away. And so for me, the ascension allows my mind to just go
Mm.
and then going into sleep. So I would use the techniques to go into sleep. I do use the techniques every night before I go to
Oh, cool.
sleep. And so I don't need to worry about screen time, because I always have my set. I actually do an hour 3 times a day. Most people wouldn't do that, but because I'm a practicing Ishaya monk, that for me is a really good foundation practice for me to continue to grow my own experience, so I can be more effective at helping others.
Yeah.
But typically we suggest 20 minutes 2 or 3 times a day. And if people do that, it's amazing how quickly your experience can change,
Mm-hmm.
really dramatically quickly. And I think doing it over a weekend as well too, for me, it really set me up, because I've done so many other techniques and so many other workshops prior to this, and it's almost just like they lasted about a week after the
Yeah.
weekend course, and then it would just fade, whereas this was replicatable.
Yeah.
And with that foundation of releasing so much stress over the course of the weekend, it gave me that platform to be able to then, when I went back into my everyday life with all the chaos and everything, it's like it enabled me to keep the momentum going, if you like.
Yeah, we talked about retreats and like longer types of workshops like that in the ecstatic dance episode that we did, and we kind of mentioned the same thing. Like if you go for a couple of days or a week or whatever, it's easier to create the habit. It's easier to have more experience to build on because you did it, for 3 hours a day for a week or whatever. When you come back to your regular life, that it makes it easier to integrate the practice. Maybe not in the same way, but you have more experience and more history to build on with it to say, oh, well, I can do that. And no, I don't have time to do an hour 3 times a day. Although it totally makes sense for where you're at, and the fact, as a instructor, a teacher, I would hope that my meditation teachers are meditating a lot and getting that experience, but that it can be kind of different, and it's a little bit easier to hold on to remembering what it felt like when you have this, a couple days, as opposed to just like one class at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually part of the way we do it as well is you pay for the weekend course, and then that money also, that payment covers ongoing support and guidance. So
Oh,
you
cool.
don't actually pay anything for the weekly meetings that we do.
Nice.
And we have quite a lot of other stuff, online now as well, since 2020 and
Yeah.
the whole pandemic thing. So there's an awful lot more support for people, and you can repeat the course for free as many times as you like. So when you come along to a course, you've got people repeating as well as people learning for the first time. And I love that setup because they asked different questions because they already had an experience.
Mm.
So for me, it gave a full and complete experience over the course of the weekend, to hear from that, and then to have that ongoing guidance. I think it's essential, and it's beautiful because, like, otherwise we get, go back into everyday life again, and it can, even with all of that, it can still fall away. And so, yeah, I think it's lovely, and that's what we kind of honor people's commitment.
Yeah.
They've shown up the whole weekend, they've paid their money, and then now, right, we've got your back now.
Yeah.
We'll help you forevermore.
So what are your biggest challenges with your meditation practice? And then what do you see with people that you're kind of guiding through learning either basic meditation or ascension type meditation?
Yeah, I think in my own practice, there's not really any difficulty anymore because I've just seen that anything that feels less than peaceful is temporary. So
Mm.
I don't resist it anymore. It's just so easy to navigate it now and to let go of it. That took a lot of practice to get to that level, though. So when I'm helping other people, really it's just supporting them through recognizing the resistance, through labeling it as difficult, because I think if you label something as difficult, it feels difficult. If
Mm.
you take away that label, if you just simply acknowledge it, and then get curious. Like I often say to people, if it gets hard, get curious, because if it's hard, there's some resistance in there.
Mm.
And essentially, that's really only happening because something is leaving, because stuff is bubbling up to go. And so it's just like, that's a good thing. It's bubbling up to go. It's only uncomfortable because you're not letting it. And so it's really just guiding people into allowing. It's almost like we have to learn to do it, but it's not something you ever do. That's the hardest thing, I think, is like allowing is something that just happens
Mm-hmm.
when you stop doing. And so, yeah, even the word allowing, letting go, allowing surrender, it sounds like you've got to do something, and actually it's not. Letting go is letting everything in. It's letting everything be exactly as it is, which is a non-doing. And so
Yeah.
it's getting used to not reacting, not doing anything with it, not judging, not labeling. And so that ongoing guidance enables people to let go, to trust, because they see the experience that I'm having. Particularly those who, like, we have people who sponsor courses for us, and a sponsor is somebody who opens up their home
Oh, cool.
for the course. And so, yeah, if I'm staying in their home all weekend and they see me outside of the actual teaching environment, and they see that my experience doesn't shift, like I'm joyful all the time, and they're just like, oh, I thought I'd trip you up, I thought I'd catch you out, there'd be a moment where you'd like lose it, and so that's powerful. I know for me, when I sponsored before I became a teacher, that was the powerful part, is to
Mm.
see the teachers really walking their talk, and it was such a solid experience. And I'm like, wow, I want this.
Yeah.
I want this for my own experience, but I also want to share this with the
Yeah.
world. For me, It's more about the sharing and giving away. And it was just the having to look after my own experience first before I could do that, because until I stabilize my experience, how on earth am I ever going to help anybody
Totally.
else when the dramatic, chaotic
Totally.
lifestyle stuff comes up,
Hmm. So how do we get away from allowing? I think about like acceptance and allowing and when you surrender and kind of what you were talking about and like children. So we just do that culturally, or like what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for me, we train our children to resist. From the most loving place in the world, and I did this with my own kids, and it obviously had been done for me. And we tend to raise our children how we were raised, even if we don't want to be like our parents.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
There's so many things that get passed down. But all the times when you go, oh, don't cry, it's okay, don't cry, rather than have a good cry, let it all out, So, and like with anger, people are, for me, one thing I recognized about anger was I was honestly so full of rage when I came to learn the ascension techniques, so full of rage.
Hmm.
Like I was reactive and triggered by everything, and one of the things I recognized was that I made it wrong. I made anger wrong. And I tried not to be angry. The more I tried not to be angry, that was when it would turn into rage, because now there's a resistance. So the pressure increases,
Yeah.
increases, increases, increases. Whereas when you actually just acknowledge it, so I started just saying, wow, I'm really angry right now. My blood is boiling, like really almost like owning it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is how I feel. And it gentled down just in the owning of it. And then you can use the ascension technique, and that redirects your attention onto the stillness that, like the awareness of anger is not angry.
Right.
And so, you start to now identify with the still silent self rather than the anger passing through, because it's like we own it, we identify with
Mm-hmm.
it. And so that's why I say own it, because it's like, well, that's what you're doing. Don't, until you see how you're doing that, you kind of have to own it for a moment and just go, yeah, I'm really angry right now. Let's examine that. Let's just pay attention for a moment. Where am I feeling it in the body? And when you notice where you're feeling it in the body, it kind of just dissipates, like as if by magic, because now you're not pushing it away. So there's no
Mm-hmm.
resistance. It's an emotion is energy in motion,
Yeah.
emotion. And so everything is always wanting to just express, to leave, to flow. And anger can, just kind of like be this energetic force that you feel the power of, and it just comes up and out like you're a chimney. It doesn't need to even lead to raising, the tone of your voice,
Mm.
the volume of your voice. Doesn't even, you can be, I know I got to the point where I had a time where I felt really angry, and I remember apologizing to the person I was with, like, I'm so sorry, I just like I was really angry there for a moment. They're like, you were? And there's someone who knew how I used to get, so they're like, there's no way you were angry, like I know what you're like when you're angry. And that's what had happened. I was starting to honor it, allow it, let it be exactly as it is, so it could just discharge by
Mm,
itself.
mm, interesting. Yeah, because I'm thinking about little kids, like they just kind of be for a while. They say the kids say the darndest things, right? That's like a TV show from a while ago. Like, little kids just they it's not that they don't care, but they just are,
Hmm.
like for a while.
They're just authentic. They're just
Yeah.
absolutely authentic. And that's the thing, is like, like when you watch a film, for example, there's all sorts of scenes that play out. There might be anger, there might be love, there might be kindness and joy and shooting and all of these just things, but it all just plays out, doesn't it? And I think if we just let what plays out play out, and keep our focus on, well, what do you want more of? If you
Mm-hmm.
keep your focus on what you want more of, then that is what will start to manifest in your reality, because what you focus on grows. And so, I think when we just acknowledge any emotion that we're having, then we're not pushing it away anymore, and it can be temporary now.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't kind of build up and up and up and up. It's almost like layers of an onion.
Yeah.
It's just like comes up and it goes.
Yeah. What is your favorite or like your go-to technique that you choose kind of more regularly over everything else that you know?
Well, for me, I mean, like the ascension techniques are my go-to technique. They're the ones I practice because they're the ones that are most effective in my experience. So those are my go-to
Nice.
techniques. And so really, advising somebody else. It's really just what they're prepared to do, because
Mm-hmm.
it's like with Ascension, you have to be, it has to be in person, and you have to show up, and you have to pay money for a whole weekend course,
Yeah.
and like that money is actually takes you a very, very long way, because you don't have to pay any more after that,
Mm-hmm.
unless you want to do advanced courses or retreats.
Yeah.
But there's so much support and guidance you can get for no more. Not everyone's prepared to do that. So then it'll be, I will just give them another mantra technique or breath med. Some people love breath
Yeah.
meditation. Some people don't like it.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's a bit tricky to say this is this one technique other than Ascension
Yeah.
that I would suggest, because it's just like horses for courses.
Yeah. Yeah.
What makes sense for people and what they're willing to do. Because actually, for me, it's just like, well, what are you willing to do? Because that's the only
And
thing
to
that
commit
you're going to
to.
continue to practice. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're going to commit to this and actually get the benefit from meditation. You have to, it has to be repetition and a consistency to there. Otherwise, it's like a drop in the ocean that's not going to make
Right.
much of a difference.
Yep.
You kind of want to build and then get your momentum and keep going.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So for me, it's the ideal technique for anyone is the one they're prepared to use.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. I like that. Awesome. Well, Meera, this has gone by very quickly. And we are now at our second to last question, which is, what is one tip about living as a spiritual being in this human existence that you would like to share with the listeners?
Stop editing. Just be yourself.
Authenticity.
That's not the thing I had written down, by the way. I had something else written down, but for me, it's just what came out in this moment. Just like, stop editing, because I think, we wear a mask, don't we? And we have a mask for when we're at the supermarket, when we're at work, when we're with our family, when we're with friends, and it's just like, take off the mask, stop editing. It can feel vulnerable and uncomfortable because we're used to them. It's like this suit of armor we're used to, but actually, if you can take that off and be vulnerable, you acclimatize to the vulnerability, and then it just becomes openness and ease and
Mm-hmm.
gentleness. And I find, anytime I'm having an interaction with somebody, if I don't edit, the words are more gentle.
Mm.
When we stop ourselves and we don't speak what we want to say, we hold it back. We hold it back until we're like, oh, I've got to speak my truth. But now it's forceful. So if you stop editing, you'll find that there's much more heart-to-heart connections with
Mm.
people, because you're just
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
So yeah, stop editing. Be
I
yourself.
like
You're
that.
you're beautiful and amazing, and I think the world needs everyone to just be themselves, and then all the bases are covered.
Yeah, I like that. Awesome. Okay, so then really the last thing is, if somebody wanted to reach out to you or get a hold of you or find out more information about the Ishaya monks and the ascension meditation, what's the best way for them to find that information?
Yeah, so just shoot me off an email, which you can find on my website, which is boundless-meditation.co.uk. And there, like I've got video shorts and guided meditations on my YouTube channel. There's books that I have, for people with pain. Surrender is Good for the Soul is the one for kind of those that are interested in spirituality. And the courses I do. So yeah, everything that I do is kind of all on my website. So you can
Awesome.
find the links
Cool.
to what interests you.
Yeah, and I'll include the direct link to the website in the show notes for sure. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for today, Meera. This was really wonderful. I feel like I loved that tip. I like authenticity, but also now I'm like, ooh, I think I want to do some different things in my meditation practice. So thank you.
You're welcome. It's been amazing. Thanks for having me.
All right, and that is the close of our meditation as spiritual beings episode with Meera. I was really happy to talk about the thoughts in meditation because, as somebody who is, I would say, still in the infancy of my meditation practice, this is something that I struggle with, and it really sounds like everyone struggles with it. And so it really took down sort of one of those barriers, I think, to meditation for me as part of these conversations, which is like, you're going to still have the thoughts. So that felt really good. I also really liked the what's best for you is what you're willing to commit to. I think that sometimes, we think what's best for someone else and what someone else is doing is really the best as like a categorical, objective best. And I think that best really is subjective. And so I liked talking about that as well. So If you're interested in hearing more or you have any questions for Meera, reach out through her website or on her Instagram. She's got a bunch of books out there too. If you've got any questions or want to leave any comments, feel free to do so directly on Spotify. They have a nice interaction kind of there. And if you want to reach out or have any other ideas or thoughts or things you'd like to discuss, I'm always available on Instagram and through my email, spirituality.what@gmail.com. See you next week. Thank you for joining me on today's Spirituality What adventure. Subscribe, rate, review, and share this podcast. Visit us on Instagram at spirituality.what to interact, tell us what spirituality means to you, and even provide some of your own personal musings. Human on, you phenomenal spiritual beings.